All right. Well, hi everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for being here today, and welcome to Industry Insights for Environment and Sustainability. This is kind of a newer series of employer panels that we've been hosting this year, so we're very appreciative that you're supporting the Pomerantz Career Center by engaging with us and being at this panel today. Just so that, as I mentioned, it's environment sustainability, so that's the career community we're focusing on, and so we have several panelists representing careers in that area. Actually, most of them in the state of Iowa, with one exception, but she is also an Iowa alum. Iowa strong here. My name is Abby Case. I'm a career coach here at the Pomerantz Career Center, and then I also work with employer outreach. I will have the panelists introduce themselves here in a minute, but first, just want to explain kind of some of the webinar logistics. I am recording this session, so if you can't attend the whole thing, or if you know other people who would benefit from learning the information shared here, please feel free to share that out. It will be made available on our Pomerantz Career Center website soon. We do have a few pre-selected questions that I'll ask of all the panelists, but there is also a Q&A feature. So audience members, you won't be able to unmute yourself, but again, you can utilize that Q&A if you have questions that you want to put in there, and we'll try to leave some time at the end for any questions that you all might have. So with that all being said, we'll go ahead and get started with the panel. So again, panelists, thank you for being here and for joining us today. Before I get started with the official questions, if you wouldn't mind going around and introducing yourself and just saying, well, who you are, what organization you represent, and then what you do there. So if we can start with Jason, then Ginger, John, Julia.
All right. Thank you, and thanks for having me here today. So my name is Jason Taylor. I am the Executive Director at Burr Oak Land Trust based in Iowa City, Iowa. My job as Executive Director is to control all the operations of the organization, do all the business side, and then do a lot of the training with the participants that we have, the other staff members for our organization.
Hi, I'm Ginger Laidlaw. I'm the Vice President of the Alternative Fuels Council. We work under a national association that represents truck stops. We not only help truck stops, but we help any retailers who are selling fuel, particularly those who are selling fuel that's blended with biofuels, biodiesel, and ethanol. So what our system, we have a system that we help these retailers with the RINs. They are something, a credit that is traded throughout underneath the renewable fuel standard. So we help our clients blend renewable fuels and find supply and help with compliance.
Good afternoon. My name is John Myers. I'm the Executive Director of Indian Creek Nature Center, which is in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We're a nature center with trails, environmental education programs, an on-site preschool, and a wide variety of other things that engage the public into being champions of nature. Similar to Jason, my role is to control the oversight and operations of the nature center and do a lot of fundraising and financial management.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Julia Krist, and I work at the United States Environmental Protection Agency. So I'm in the federal government, and I'm actually in Region 2 in New York City. So Region 2 is comprised of New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and then 8 Indian nations. And yeah, I'm an environmental engineer in the Air and Radiation Division. So I do a mix of things from grant oversight and review to indoor air quality outreach to some climate adaptation outreach. So it's a bit of a mixed bag of grants and outreach, but yeah, that is me.
All right, thank you all for that. So the first question is, what did you study in college and how has it influenced your professional journey? And for this first question, we'll just go in the same order. So Jason, Ginger, John, then Julia. It's helpful that it's all alliterative.
Perfect. So my undergrad is in environmental science. And so I was at the University of Iowa and I was in microbiology, figured out that I did not like that, but was able to go over into environmental science and found a phenomenal mentor that really helped me figure out that's really what my passion was. And then I later did go back to get my master's in educational assessment and psychometrics, which is not the field I ended up in professionally, but at the same time, even that, like I learned so much from it, and the grad school experience was fantastic. So yeah, I definitely encourage people to consider grad school, but it's one of those things where it's often good to have some time between your undergrad and your graduate program to determine what you really enjoy doing.
Well, I might not be as popular as the others, but I got my degree in earth science at University of Northern Iowa. Um, Even though my job right now is very business orientated, but it's still a form of environmental work. And I feel like because I have a science background, it helps support and help me stay curious and do research about things, how things work, and how can I understand the technical aspects of what I'm doing or what my clients are facing. I've also kept a very open mind since the beginning from graduating, what job supported my internal need to help the environment. My first job was an environmental tech, very down and dirty job, but that really started the path of, when you start in a lower position like that, maybe it wasn't quite the salary I was looking for, but it was still so much experience and really built the foundation for where I am today. So I appreciate having that initial, and then I worked for the government as well. So I provide private consultant, and then the government, and now back to kind of being on the private end of things, but also on the nonprofit side too. So I've kind of worked in every sector, which I also feel is very helpful, and kind of understanding where my clients are and how I can apply all the different sectors and how it applies to my clients.
My degree is in business administration from Upper Iowa University. I actually took the non-traditional path of or I guess more traditional path of having multiple majors, depending on which way you look at it, multiple majors before I decided which one that I wanted to go into. And really landed on business administration because I really enjoyed the business skills, the HR, the finance, the accounting, the marketing, those skill sets that were necessary to run an organization. And I've really enjoyed putting the passion together of mission-oriented work and combining the business skills, bringing the business skills that I learned in school to mission-oriented work to help an organization run even better, more strategic, and more leadership focused.
Yeah, so I studied environmental engineering in undergrad, and I also got a sustainability certificate. And I think that pairing was great because I got to get some of the classes that I wouldn't have normally had under the engineering program. The College of Liberal Arts and Sciences classes available there that the engineering program didn't have, like an environmental justice course, which is really relevant to, all fields of sustainability, I think. And yeah, so I think that was a good play. I started in environmental policy and I pivoted to engineering, but I still knew I wanted to keep some of the societal aspects of, environmental policy in those courses that I wouldn't get in engineering. And then right out of undergrad, I took an engineering degree working for a consulting company in Kansas City, doing a lot of field work, doing a lot of AutoCAD design. And I tried that out for a while and decided that wasn't really my fit. And then I pivoted to, the government and a federal career, which I had always kind of envisioned myself in the government or nonprofit sector. So I think it was the right fit, but it was good to have that experience. And kind of playing around with my undergrad degree taught me it's okay to transition and to try something new if it's not really what you're hoping it is at the time.
Yeah, really great advice. So the next question is, what are some of the most significant trends currently shaping your industry? And can you share an example of how you or your organization is adapting to meet new challenges? Now, I recognize you're not all technically representing all the exact same industry, so it's okay to be general here. This time we'll start with John and then go to Jason.
So in nature education, well, let me take a step back. There's a lot of trends impacting things right now, and especially in the past 100 days, there's a lot of things that are happening. And so one of the things that I want to talk about is really the trend during one of the last major changes, and that was the global pandemic. And for the pandemic, for a nonprofit, many times it was a lot of unknowns. So one of the things that we knew that we needed to do is we needed to never let a crisis go to waste, and that's a piece of advice that had been given to me early on: never let a crisis go to waste. And so we took that pandemic and we leaned into one of the significant trends of our industry, which was more and more time outside. So people learn better and they engage longer when they're outside. Um, and so by looking at ways that we could increase the amount of time that people were spending outside in the middle of a pandemic, we actually started a preschool. And when many schools were letting out and many schools were not taking advantage of the opportunities in front of them, we actually said, okay, we're in an outdoor setting. We can really fight the pandemic in a really unique way. And so we started a nature-based outdoor preschool where 3, 4, and 5-year-olds spend their time outside learning in nature. And they spend 100% of their time outside. With the right clothing and the right gear, even in Iowa, you can have an outdoor preschool program. And so really one of the things that was important for us was, as I mentioned, never letting a crisis go to waste and finding an opportunity to look at something that was detrimental to an organization or could be detrimental and find a way to make it positive.
Yeah, I will absolutely add to that. I think the biggest significant trend that's in our space right now in the nonprofit sector, I would say, is honestly instability. There's a lot going on, and I think that it's very difficult when you're a nonprofit. Any business, when you have instability, it can be very difficult because you don't necessarily know what the kind of standard ins and outs are. And I just as an example that I was not planning on talking about, but yesterday we were notified that 2/3 of our staff, which are part of a federal program, were eliminated. And so, we've had to spend in the last 24 hours trying to figure out how we're able to maintain operations as a nonprofit working in conservation space in a busy time of the year, how we're able to fix that, not just for our business, for our organization, our nonprofit, but how to take care of all those individuals that unfortunately we had to let go yesterday because the funding was removed. And so a lot of it is, thinking about how do you work with problem solvers that understand that sometimes the problems is easy to identify, but it's really about how do we all come together to identify those solutions and react quickly. It's not about waiting until we have all the information. A lot of times it's about adapting. And I'll kind of hold on the rest of that until the next question because I know we're going to get into some things that are key traits.
I'm going to continue on with that instability because with renewable fuels, biofuels, actually right now, biofuels, the plants, the biodiesel plants are operating at about 40% of where they would normally be because of the unknown, because of tax incentives that are not there, regulations that are kind of behind schedule and announcement. So they really there's just a lot of instability as to how much fuel can be created. There's not a business case that supports creating the fuel. Therefore, my clients, who are the ones that are actually blending the fuel with diesel or gasoline, they are kind of in a spot too where it doesn't make sense for them, or they don't even have the availability to blend with biodiesel or ethanol. So, in these challenging times, we have been kind of looking outside of, regulations really, EPA regulations have been driving our business, but for now, we are actually looking into more of a voluntary market, more on the environmental, sustainability, governance, ESG plans. Those companies that are still out there that are still trying to meet those standards or those marks that they're trying to make are still buying those types of credits. So we're looking at what our clients do. Can we turn this into, is there a possibility for a voluntary market? So there's that. And then the other thing that we recognized after COVID was, staffing. Staffing's been really tough for many different types of businesses. And for our businesses, we just decided, hey, we can help. We can help. Maybe you've had someone who's been doing this work, but now you don't have that person, or that person wears 20 hats. Can we help? Can we take that? So we just added kind of a new business to what we did and just provided more service to our clients so that we could lighten the load.
Yeah, I think a lot of similar themes running across the panelists and especially at the federal government. A lot of change and uncertainty at the moment. And yeah, I think a part of that is, again, just being flexible, compartmentalizing, keeping work at work and home at home when you can. And trying to see how the work that you've been doing can be promoted. Clean air, land, and water, I think are all things that everybody can agree are important things. And so trying to maintain that theme and emphasize the importance of what is being done, especially in the clean air sector. But yeah, I think a lot of instability. Obviously, there's a freeze right now on hiring for the federal government, and a reduction in force going through a lot of agencies. So I think we're going to see the impact of that, not today or tomorrow. I mean, obviously, some agencies are experiencing it differently than others, but at the EPA, I think maybe it's going to be borne out a little bit in the future about what exactly this means for us. But yeah, staying adaptable and flexible.
Yes. Thank you all for those thoughts. And yeah, uncertain times amongst us for sure. So with that in mind, what are some key skills, qualities, or experiences you believe helped you progress in your career to get to the point where you're at now? And this time we will actually start back with Julia and then go to John, Ginger, then wrap up with Jason.
Yeah, I like this question. And coming back to speak for students at the University of Iowa, I think a lot of great experiences and skills that I built and worked on and developed in my undergrad were built at Iowa, obviously in the different programs that were not necessarily found in the classroom. So I worked in the Office of Sustainability and the Environment, and that gave me great opportunities. Like I actually got to work with the city contact on some opportunities and kind of get my first experience of working with government. And I got to sit in on like the presidential sustainability charter committee and see how the university functions and thinks about sustainability as a whole and decision making and next steps. And then also in the student organizations, I feel like I took leadership positions in those so that I could have marketable skills down the road, but also so that I could get experience into what it meant to help lead people and have action items and actually get things done and work through the maybe bureaucracy of campus, and like getting things approved and passed and funding for certain things. So I think all of those experiences definitely helped me shape the career that I have now. And I kind of joked with some of my friends who I worked with in the Office of Sustainability, like the EPA, at least my position is like a giant national Office of Sustainability. Like some of the same issues we had there, I see today. So yeah, I think just staying involved and trying to see all the different opportunities that you can really helped me. And yeah, I think all skills, communication, outreach, being a team player was all built there.
One of the common themes of the work that I do is that it all involves people. Everything that I do involves people, whether it's working with our donors, working with employees, working with community members. And so actually working with, leading, interacting with people, the experiences I've had in the past that have put me in front of people and allowed me to figure out how to best work with people are some of the biggest opportunities that I've had. So whether that was in my undergrad, whether it was the formal or the informal education, as Julia mentioned, or whether it was other programs. I went through the scouting leadership programs, and that gave me a lot of experience working with people. And so I really know that in order to advance in my career, I would not have been as successful without knowing how to work with people. And so I've adapted kind of a mentality of that I've used with my team, and that's called believe in people and empower people. And that's how we manage, and that's how we work at Indian Creek Nature Centers. We trust people. We empower them to be successful. We create a culture and an atmosphere of that trust and empowerment. And when we do that, ultimately we get the best out of people. So the really, it's not just about those you manage, but it's about your coworkers, your constituents, your donors, everybody that you work with. And ultimately, it's those experiences that put me in front of people early on in my career and early on in my education that helped form my ability to work with people today.
I like that John just talked about basically customer service, right? Empathizing, I feel, is a very important skill to have at many different levels, being that I've worked in different levels of environmental work, whether it's government or private, to be able to listen to your clients, be able to listen to your coworkers, having that skill will mean everything. That will produce the trust, like John was talking about. I would also say be a risk taker. As I was talking about earlier, maybe it was a little scary to think about the job that I was doing at first was something I had never done before. Um, I needed to do it because it's only helped me as I've moved forward. I've been able to do tech work and understand later on when I became more of a report writer that I understood how that data was being derived. So each step is very important to learn those pieces so you can really, you don't want to silo yourself. You want to make sure that you can diversify your knowledge. Don't stay in one little silo. Make sure you expand and experience as much as you can. But definitely people skills are important, and no matter what career you choose, that's the only way to move forward.
Feel like I can echo everyone here, which is nice when you go last. But just going off of something Ginger just said, so not siloing yourself. You'd be surprised. There's very few positions where you wear, that one hat. Most, if you work for a nonprofit, especially, but I think it's across the board, for profits, government work, whatever it is. The better workers are the ones that have the ability to adapt and put on those various hats at the appropriate time. And sometimes you are the leader. Sometimes you are the individual who is going to have to be the follower. Sometimes you are the individual that is going to be in charge of, a massive project. You need to know how to kind of adapt your style and your flow to fit the need. A couple things. I think this is one of my favorite questions, but one of the skills that I feel is incredibly critical right now is the ability for people to be resilient. Mike Tyson has this great quote where it's like everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And the reality is that there's always going to be something that goes wrong. So you can have the most amazing strategic plan. You can go through the process of building your organization's strategic plan and get it ready and packaged up and submit it in February of 2020, right before COVID hits, right? And then all of a sudden, all of that, it's not wasted because the important part of it was creating that plan. And so now you have a decent idea, but it's all going to be different. So you have to know when to stick with the plan and you have to know when to deviate. And so a lot of it is that resilience component. Um, the leadership style that you as an individual bring to a team it has to be unique. don't try to just mimic someone else's leadership style. You have to create your own. And so some people really value the idea of like servant-based leadership. And I think that's something I've kind of gone towards. And I think it works very well for again, my style and my team. But you have to really figure out what works best for you when you're in those leadership positions. Don't just mimic. And then the last thing is have confidence. There's nothing that I like. I would rather have someone be confident and wrong than kind of meek with a good idea, but they aren't willing to kind of bring it to the forefront. I want people to come to me with their ideas, and we might workshop them. They might be a little bit, need to be tweaked over here, tweaked over there. But if you bring ideas with confidence, it's going to mean a lot towards your future growth, and no matter what field you go into.
All right, thank you all. Really great practical advice. So the next question is, what networking strategies would you suggest for students aiming to build meaningful connections in your field? This time we will start with Ginger and then go to Julia, Jason, and John.
I would say the best thing you can do is belong to and participate in some professional organizations, locally, nationally, attend webinars, go to their conferences. A lot of times there's student discounts. But I know some of them are maybe too far away, but if there's something you can drive to, and I'm sure there's plenty that are local, that you can join and just be a part of, even though, you're a student, you still can be very involved and start networking with people there, because someone is recruiting for their business. So I think that's a great place to do some networking.
Yeah, I think in that vein, just this might sound cliche, but don't be afraid to really put yourself out there. Go to the career fair, even if you're not necessarily interested in any of the companies there. Attend the club, if they're hosting someone. I know when I was in the Environmental Coalition, we hosted, I think Jason actually at one point to talk about Burr Oak. So yeah, go to those events. Look for people on LinkedIn who are working in the field you're interested in and message them and ask if they'd like to have, like a 15-minute virtual chat or meetup if they're nearby. But yeah, I think you need to just start talking to people and start practicing it because it's definitely a skill, marketing yourself, marketing your interests. Being, starting off in that you're like, why do they want to hear from me? But people are, just genuinely curious about who's in their field, and you never know what positions or opportunities they might have for you to try. So yeah, just get your face out there and start talking to people. That's kind of what it is.
I think putting yourself out there is incredibly important, and it's an uncomfortable space for me. I'm a bit of an introvert, and so when I go to conferences, unless I have that person that I know, I'm the worst at conferences. But I force myself to do it, right? It's part of my job, and so I have to get out there. So sometimes you do have to put yourself out and kind of be on that bleeding edge of what you really do feel is comfortable or not. Um, the thing I would say for individuals that are interested in more of the kind of like the field level work that we do in conservation especially is work with these individuals on a project in the field. If you can show your service, your value to individuals actually doing the work, it means so much more than just simply meeting them at a conference or sending them an email. If you show that you're a hard worker, that take instructions well, that you come up with good ideas when you're actually doing the physical work, that means the world, and they will remember that, and they will look for you when it comes time to actually hire people. And so that sometimes is not easy. One of the great examples that we have in Iowa is every year there's a big out west in the Los Hills area. There's a big prescribed fire council where about 120 people get together and we do prescribed fire for a full week. And so there's like 60 agencies that are coming together. So you have people from every walks of life, all these different agencies. meeting each other one time a year and working alongside each other. And that is probably the number one networking opportunity I've seen because you're intermingling so tightly and then you're working so collaboratively on a daily basis. That is you cannot reproduce that in something like in a conference setting.
Yeah, and I would just continue to piggyback off of what has been said about um, it, putting yourself out there and getting to know new people. Eventually, or ultimately, it's the people connections that are really going to make the difference in a job search. And so there's probably not many people that wouldn't that if you reached out and said, "Hey, could I have that quick Zoom chat or could we get coffee?" There's probably not many people that wouldn't actually take you up on that. Most people, especially when you talk about CEOs and others, they want to cultivate new talent. They want to see that. And while their schedule may be busy, most of them actually make time for that. So don't be afraid to reach out. The other piece of advice that I was given early on is to be interested in people rather than be interesting. So really focus on how can you be interested in other people there, ask questions, ask thoughtful questions, rather than trying to sell yourself. And because that's how you build relationships and that's how you build connections all the way through. So put yourself out there and don't be afraid to talk to other people.
John, I'm going to steal that. I love that. I had not heard that before. Be interested. So the next question, kind of in a similar vein, how can students and new graduates stand out in a competitive job market, especially as entry-level employees? This time we'll start with Jason and then go to Ginger, then John, then wrap up with Julia.
It's incredibly difficult. A lot of you are going to have the academic background, but not a lot of experience. What Julie mentioned with regards to all of the stuff that you did, Julia, when you were in college, like that's amazing. That was not me. I wish I could have done some of that stuff, right? But if you're still in college, do that. That's fantastic. You need to set yourself apart, and you need to be able to show that you're passionate about something. And anytime I'm trying to hire someone, if they don't have a lot of experience in the job force, if they show passion in something and they can talk about why they like it and how it's involved in their life, how it's changed their life, that's the stuff that shows that if you can at least kind of sink your teeth into that, or if they can like attack whatever it is you're asking them to do with that same interest, then they're going to be a great employee for you. The ones that don't show that are the ones that I found just generally don't get it. And so be prepared when you do these interviews to talk about something with a pretty firm level of passion, even though you're not expected to be the world's most expert on whatever it is you're interviewing for, but you definitely have to have like a lot of knowledge around what the position is entailed, like what they're asking you to do, and then show them, hey, this is what I think I'm going to do really well at. Here's all the stuff that I know I don't know. And so make sure you show that research of like, here's my strengths, here's my weaknesses, and here's what I'm going to do to overcome those weaknesses when I have this job with you.
Right along with what Jason's saying. I think it's very important that you know what job you're applying for, what is the industry like. So you're coming to an interview or applying for a job that you have some understanding, but obviously also know where you don't know everything and explain that. But I think experiences, wherever it may be, if it's not specifically in environmental or sustainability, is okay. It doesn't matter where you have experience, is what you pull from those experiences that you can show to that employer that you learned from and you can apply to this current job that you're applying for. So I wouldn't get too caught up into what exactly you're doing, but maybe just trying to pull that experience into this job that they're looking at. And I think maybe even being an officer within a group that's on campus or locally, just kind of knowing how things work and that situation I think is also helpful as a job, but also just an experience that you can share. And again, being able to apply that to the job that you're applying for.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly with everything that's been said so far. To take that just a touch further, in nonprofits, we oftentimes have volunteer experiences as well as internships. And so, obviously go after those internships, but also look at other ways you can be involved with the company. If volunteering, we use a tremendous number of volunteers every year to run our programs and to help out with a variety of different tasks. And we like to hire those people that we know that have shown a passion, as Jason mentioned, and to show that they want to be involved with us. And so, whether it's a nonprofit or a business, find different and unique ways to get involved with that business, because that will really help out. Because employers want to hire people they know. It's a lot less risky to hire somebody who we have already interacted with, we already know. And while that may not be possible all the time, take advantage of that when you can.
Yeah. John said internships, and that's something that came to top of mind for me. As an engineering undergrad, I know that's something big that's pushed, is getting that experience while you're an undergrad. Unfortunately, my intern year was unavailable due to COVID, so I was supposed to move for the summer to do that, but I still was able to do some virtual research on campus. So, pivoting, finding that those experiences. Also, mock interviews are great if you have a position you're really passionate about, and maybe there's another interview that you can do for something you might not be as interested in. I know I did that one year with an engineering position. They were like, "We already filled it, but I'll still do an interview with you if you'd like." And I remember it went horribly, but it was a good learning experience to be like, "Okay, that luckily was not for anything real, but it was like." Get used to those questions, think a little bit more for a position you actually are excited about and you want to do well in that interview. And I would also plug, you have the most resources right now as a student at Iowa than you probably are going to have in the future when applying to jobs. And people like Abby who can help look at your resume or do mock interviews with you or have all those resources. I think it's something you hear a lot and but you don't, necessarily act on it. But it is a great resource while you're at Iowa to use those resources on campus. And your academic advisor as well is somebody who can, maybe connect you with the right position or openings, or knows about, if you're interested in research, they could potentially open up that world for you if you are thinking about, going on to get a secondary degree that might require research, or just something in a field that wants to see more of that hands-on experience already taken. So yeah, those would be my plugs.
I promise I did not bribe Julia to plug the Career Center, but yes, definitely appreciate that. Jason, do you have another thought to add?
I did. I thought I'd try raising my hand there and see if it worked. So I wanted to throw one more thing in just based on something that Julia said. So I feel like one of the skills that is so vital, and this kind of goes back up to key skills, but then also the competitive job market, is good communication skills. I cannot emphasize enough how important that is, whether it is verbal, whether it's email, on the phone. If you have good communication skills, it is going to be so much easier for people to want to work with you. So whatever it takes for you to gain those skills, I think one of the most critical things is being able to become an authentic public speaker. John knows as an executive director, if you cannot communicate to your donors, if you cannot communicate to your public, why you as an organization deserve their funds, deserve their trust, then it is going to be absolutely impossible for you to exist as an organization. And so being able to tell those stories from your past, being able to kind of weave that narrative is so incredibly important. And you can practice this literally every single day. When you're driving home from something, just like start giving a little speech about something. Like I really can't emphasize like the need to practice a lot of this enough because everyone is terrible at it at the very beginning. But once you force yourself to get up in front of people a couple times, and again, you develop your own authentic style, you're going to find that it's so much easier and people will start to listen to you. And once they start to listen to you, it makes it so much easier for them to want to work with you.
Thank you. Great addition. So only one more question or pre-established question, and then we can open it up for any Q&A. So what advice would you give to students who are unsure about their specific career path within this industry? This time we'll start with John, Jason, Julia, then wrap up with Ginger.
One of the things that I think is so important when you're committing to a career is that you find what you're passionate about doing, because there is going to be a lot of tasks, a lot of work things that are going to be what you're not passionate about, just that come with every part of the job, right? And so, but if you find a cause or you find an organization or you find a skill set that you are passionate about, really, really lean into that. And I think that's actually pretty easy within the environmental and sustainability fields because people who work in these fields tend to lean into that passion a little bit more. But there's, as representatives here in the call, there's a wide variety of different ways that you can get engaged into that. So the other thing that I had to do early on in my career was try new things and not be afraid to make a change. So especially in my first few years of school, I changed my major several times to find what I was passionate about. But I also, even though I've been in nonprofits almost my entire career, this is my first. I've been in this role for 12 years now, but this is my first environmental organization that I've worked for. I was in the human services side of nonprofits before this. And so I had to change it up. You know, I wasn't passionate about social services and human services the way that I am about the outdoors, recreation, the environment. And so finding your passion is so critical because you're going to be devoting a lot of your time and yourself to that role, and you want to make sure that you're passionate about it.
Again, echoing, but do not be afraid to change it up when it's not working for you. I have been in the military. I owned my own business. I did large scale test construction. I worked with curriculum development and professional development for teachers. I've done all of this different stuff before I came to this field. And I've learned so much from every one of those roles, but at the same time, I knew when it was my time to exit whatever that previous one was. And so I was doing very well in the nonprofit education space, and I woke up one day and I realized I was not happy anymore. And so I decided to go back to conservation. So just to kind of go back to what John had mentioned with finding your passion, there's this phenomenal Japanese philosophy. It's called Ikigai. It's Ikigai. The idea is there's four different things you want to work towards. It's what you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and then what you're good at. And the intersection of all of those is really kind of like your reason for living. If you can figure out how to do all of those things and you know actually make a living at it, you're going to be happy and you're going to be doing awesome stuff.
Yes, I think a lot of us have switched our paths a little bit. Like I mentioned, I studied environmental engineering, and even though my title now is an environmental engineer in my current role, I wouldn't say I do very much engineering in my day to day, but there are those opportunities within the government. So, like looking for new opportunities, knowing the flexibility that your career path is going to provide. Again, yeah, being unafraid to make that switch. Um, And yeah, I think also just kind of shadowing people or asking people about what their day to day looks like in a position is important. I know when I interviewed for this position, there were like 3 different roles available. And I kind of asked about the day to day of each. And I narrowed in on this position because I knew I would get to do outreach as long as, some desk work and a mix of things that seemed best suited to my personality rather than there was like a permitting position that was just going to be reading most all days and meeting about the readings and the technologies, which, certainly I had the background for, but I knew that wasn't going to keep me as interested. And then, yeah, so asking people what kind of careers are out there. Sometimes you just don't know that something is a career until you meet somebody who does it as their job. And so that's really important to try and just, yeah, learn about new experiences, learn about new positions. Yeah, I think that would be my advice. And yeah, be unafraid to change and to try new things and um, yeah, to use all the experiences you have to do a new role.
I wish I had you all listened to when I graduated from college. Um, uh, just to kind of I feel like I can sum up what everybody said, but again, just don't silo yourself. So I had a degree in earth science, a minor in astronomy, and I was thinking, what am I going to do in Iowa? What on earth am I going to do in Iowa? But what happened was, back in the day, going back to the want ads, I found environmental tech, and I just took a chance just to see what it's about, and it just started me on this path of consulting, and it started the networking. You meet people, and you start moving around as the places that you can use your passion. So mine obviously is environmental passion. But I also have an internal need to help people. And so that's why wherever I've gone, I've used that to help people, not only push my environmental, passion, but I've also been able to help. I want to help clients and they want that. They want me to help them understand the regulations, empathize with them. So again, find out you don't have to silo yourself, be open to positions that might not seem compatible to your degree. As long as you're passionate about it and you're willing to put the work into it and learn as much as you can, it will only benefit your career.
All right. Thank you to all of our panelists for one, sharing your time with us today, but also for your great advice and wisdom through your answers. Really much, very much appreciate all that you've shared today. That is the end of our pre-selected questions. Again, audience members aren't able to unmute themselves, but if people want to ask any additional questions, we will stay here for at least a few minutes to see if anything pops up. And in fact, there already was one. Okay, so I will go ahead and ask this from someone who has started a sustainability-based student organization as of this semester. Congrats. What are some projects that you all feel are important on a college campus? We focus a lot on practical application for sustainable living and educational programs, but are looking to expand the scope of our volunteering and research as the organization grows. I can also put that in the chat for you panelists to be able to see again if you want to reread it, but that is the first question if anyone wants to jump in.
I can jump in as somebody who was, yeah, very involved in the Environmental Coalition. I'm also very intrigued by this new organization. That's so exciting. I think some projects that we focused on that probably are still very relevant, waste management. One of our efforts was to get more clearly labeled bins in the Memorial Union for people, because there's composting available there, but people don't necessarily know what they can compost. And we did the waste audits. That was a lot of fun. I think Blake Group is actually on this call, one of my previous bosses at the OSC. So I know, like Beth McKenzie, we did waste audits. That was a lot of fun. And a good way to get people volunteered, weighing out different contaminants in the waste stream. I think I was kind of perusing the OSE page just to see what student intern positions are there now, but I know there's a lot of outreach with the hospital, as that's a very big part of campus life, but also a place where a lot of waste comes in naturally, just with it being such a large facility. So that could be a project. I think I've seen things about like fair trade working on campus, so raising awareness around that. Yeah, there are just a lot of great opportunities. And professors, I would say if you like have a topic that you're interested in and a professor who you know teaches something in that field, maybe reach out to them to see if they have ideas. Because chances are they've been around a lot longer than most students will ever be on campus, and so they kind of see the change of things. But also, yeah, the Office of Sustainability, Beth and Stratus. So that would be my advice.
So not necessarily on campus, but maybe taking on a project outside of campus, picking a business to kind of do an audit for them so they can understand what they could be doing in a more sustainable way. I actually had an intern a couple summers ago that focused in on a truck stop and kind of there's so many different things going on there that, but you have to kind of hone in but you can do a wider spectrum of all the things and then narrow it down to something that makes sense to them. This is where the business analysis comes in. You can't just, tell them all these things. You've got to how do you actually do this? And does it make economical sense? Because that is how businesses are going to do things like that, the private sector. So kind of have to hone in on what they can actually do, what can they actually make a difference with, and how much is it going to cost? Is this something easy that they can do? Provide education um, they may not have their own ESG plan, but maybe there's something just in particular that they could do for their business.
I'll go ahead and move on to the next question. Thank you both for responding to that one. You are talking a lot about being unafraid and bold. So what would you say to shy students who might feel demotivated by this talk?
I'll start with that one. I am incredibly introverted, and I was definitely one of those shy people. If you find someone to assist you with this, you're going to learn those skills. And so when I go to conferences or when I'm in a situation where I don't know people, I am terrible. And so I'll often take someone with me who does better with that, where they'll introduce me to people. And then we'll kind of go around the room and I'll learn people. Oftentimes when shy or introverted people get to know someone or they connect with them in some capacity, whatever it is that they might have in common, they have a bond that allows them to break out of that shyness. But it just takes them to get past that initial boundary. And so, as someone who has definitely been there and still to this day goes through it, it's definitely possible to break out of that. But you just have to learn some skills, including having a friend who is better at it assist you with that type of stuff.
That's really good advice. And actually, kind of similar to another question, which was how do we stay positive with the government changes and not be scared by job security? If anyone wants to answer that.
I'm going to take notes as well on this one. So,
I was going to say no comment.
I was just going to say that big word, adaptability. You just got to be able to adapt to what's going on and realize that nothing is set in stone. So always kind of keep an open mind.
And look for other opportunities that are out there as well, right? Because just because one change comes up doesn't mean that there's not something that's better out there. And so it can be hard to navigate that, but keep your options open and be adaptable.
the only constant is that change is going to happen, right? And so it may be a little bit more frequent now and a little bit chaotic right now. But if you can get good at it now when it is so chaotic, you're going to feel so much more stable and so much more better when it's a little bit easier. So I would say utilize it. Don't be afraid of it.
Okay, the next question, besides pulling from other experiences, how would you recommend navigating entry level positions that might ask for multiple years of experience as someone who's just getting ready to graduate?
They're looking for someone. All you have to do is convince them that you're that person, right? And so they're going to throw all this stuff out there. You need 5 years of this or 4 years or whatever. You need this degree. they're never going to find the person that has all of that stuff. You have to have some of it. You can't go in there and be completely, separated from reality where you're, not capable of any of the things that they're asking for. But the reality is that as long as you can show them that, hey, you want 5 years, I have 2 years, but I have a whole lot of other skills in these other areas. Again, you go in there with that confidence, you go in there like being able to communicate, they're going to overlook that very quickly. Oftentimes, the people who write those things are not the people who are going to be interviewing you. And so they may not even realize, like, oh, yeah, they wanted 5 years, you have 3 years. It doesn't matter because you're such a good culture fit. You're such a good fit for the organization. And so they'll very quickly overlook that if you have those other skills ready to go.
Yeah, one thing, oh, and so as a career coach who also talks to a lot of recruiters, we think about a lot of times job descriptions as a wish list. So yes, obviously some of the things in there are necessary for the job, but the amount of years of experience sometimes is flexible. And so just to Jason's point, if you only have 3 years of experience, or you feel like you can do the job, even if you're lacking a little bit of the actual qualified years, I'd still apply. Okay, just for sake of
Yes.
time. Oh, go ahead. There is one more question
Sorry.
afterwards, but go ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna, second that and say applied for a position that wasn't necessarily, I didn't have the qualifications for, and they ended up referring me to a different position that they thought might also be interested in, and I ended up not taking that position. I got an offer though, so wouldn't have known about the position, wouldn't have applied regardless, but doing that, led to more opportunities down the road.
Great point. Okay, we'll make this the last question, again, just for sake of time. Any tips on resumes or job applications? And similar vein, especially as someone with a lack of experience, is what they said.
I would just say, don't focus in on just your formal experience. Everybody has opportunities, or everybody's participated in different things. They have life experience in different ways. So find ways that you can tailor that to what they're asking for. Just because it's not a formal experience doesn't mean that it cannot be valuable. And I think the more that you can tailor that, like Jason said, the more that you can sell yourself in that regards, the better off you'll be.
I will throw in there, if it asks for a cover letter, provide a cover letter. You would not believe how many times we'll get applications where we explicitly state provide a cover letter as well as a resume, and they just provide a resume. And I will tell you, it is very difficult to pass that forward unless they are just a rock star across the board. And then we'll still ask for them to provide a cover letter because, again, the cover letter shows their ability to communicate. And so it is one of those things where make sure you know exactly what they're looking for and try to provide it. Don't give them any opportunity to exclude you prior to that interview. And so you want to do all the stuff, if possible, so that it's difficult for them to pass on you.
Yeah. The federal hiring process is unique in that, like, we use one portal, USA Jobs. All the jobs are posted there. Depends on, the type of position, the competitiveness of it. But yeah, make sure you have solidified your resume, have somebody else look it over. Make sure you're highlighting all the important stuff. And I don't even know who reads our resumes at this point. Like, from the federal perspective in USA Jobs, it's a bit of a black box, but like, there's an intake quiz often. And if you have any amount of experience and, like, maybe you talked about this in a class one time, or like, heard one lecture on it, I would say, like, say that you have that relevant experience. And then once you get to the interview process, let them decide if you're qualified or not. But yeah, never discredit yourself in the beginning. So that would be my advice.
I'll just say there's actually been very few times where I've had to apply for a job because of who I knew. So there wasn't a formal process. It was just, I knew somebody and they needed to fill a position and they asked me to fill it. So it was very few times where I actually had to go through that formal process. So the networking and meeting people is very important.
All right. Well, thank you again, everyone, for being here. Really appreciate your thoughts and for being a wonderful panelist. And for our audience who was able to attend, appreciate you being here as well. And with that, we are wrapped up. So thank you again, everyone, for being here.